All right, we are recording.
Thank you. Good morning and welcome to the Friday, July 14th, 2023 public meeting for the District of Columbia Clemency Board. The first half hour of the meeting will be open to the public from 10:30 until 11, and the following hour is reserved today for a closed board meeting. Before we begin our meeting today, I just want to remind everyone of a few housekeeping rules. First, please make sure your microphones are muted when you're not speaking. If you have any questions, please hold them. We'll have a period for questions. However, you can also take advantage of the chat function to send questions in, and we'll happily address them during the question and answer portion of the meeting. I'd like to take attendance of the board members present so we can make sure we have a quorum to proceed. I'll call the board members' names, so please let me know if you are here. Felisa Carter.
Here.
Emily Gunston. Brian Ferguson. Mike Porcello.
Here.
Katya Semyonova.
Here.
Alana Settenberg.
Here.
I know that Indira Hennard will not be here with us today. We need 5 members to reach a quorum and proceed with the meeting. Staff Director, we have a quorum. Okay. So our agenda today is starts with old business. And first, we want to talk about the mock application and records review process. So on May 18th and May 24th, the board held a mock application hearing in anticipation of evaluating an actual application very soon. Our staff director created the mock application and records for our review and coordinated the hearings for a mock applicant, victim, and the mock applicant's sister. The mock applicant applied to the board seeking a letter of recommendation for a total commutation for the charges of assault with a dangerous weapon and burglary stemming from a case where he was sentenced to 25 years. The applicant was sentenced in 2007 when the applicant was 23 years old and had served 15 and a half years of his sentence. The board heard from the applicant, who was actually a member of the community who attended our first event. Thank you very much. She is a DC public high school teacher whose story she told was actually that of the father of one of her previous students, who has since passed away. After the hearings and the discussion, the board ultimately chose in favor of granting the applicant a letter of recommendation. With little to no guidance in the law concerning hearing procedures, the mock hearings provided a great procedural run-through to see which areas of the hearing process flowed and which areas there remained gaps. As a result, some process changes that came from the mock hearings are the following. 1, witnesses are not sworn in. 2, the board and witnesses are expected to be on camera during the hearings if virtual. 3, multiple hearings can happen should the board decide more information is needed. 4, the board will not use any kind of internal metric or rubric to serve as a baseline for deciding whether to grant clemency. I invite if any of the board members have any comments about the mock application process. Please, I think it was a great process. I really appreciate the work that went into preparing all that documentation. And I think it was very worthwhile for us as a board. Others? Okay, hearing none. All right, the second item under old business, applications, inquiries, and common issues. So we're still receiving many inquiries via phone, mail, email, and the CoreLink, which is the BOP communication system. Unfortunately, many of these inquiries are from persons with federal charges, either requesting clemency in a non-formal way or wanting to check the status of their clemency application that has been filed with the pardon attorney's office. We have also received inquiries from other agencies, such as those who are completing background checks for persons applying for employment, who also confuse the board with the Office of Pardon Attorney. This has taught us that this confusion is and likely will continue to be a common error among the public. It's important that we continue to educate the community, both the public and other stakeholder agencies, on who we are and how we are different from the pardon attorney's office. In each instance so far, the staff director has informed the inquirer of what the board does, the board's limitations, the process for DOJ pardon, and the contact information for the pardon attorney's office. So on that note, we have received 2 more applications since the last board meeting in May. This makes a total of 4 applications so far this year. Unfortunately, one is for a federal offense, and that application will be closed. However, there are two other pending applications with DC code offenses and therefore eligible for our consideration, who legally qualify for consideration from this board. Tiffany Smith, who I believe I saw on, is on with us today, is the managing attorney of clinical and experiential programs at UDC. Attorney Smith has offered to take on assisting both applicants with their applications to the board in her personal capacity. Both of the open legally qualifying applicants will be referred to her as they continue their process through the submission of any additional information for consideration and their hearings. Over the next few weeks, please check your email and box accounts for updates regarding these applications. Next, in old business, I want to mention the community event that we held in the southwest quadrant of the city. It was our second community event on Tuesday, June 6th. It was from 6:30 p.m. at the Southwest Library located in Southwest. We had a much smaller turnout at this event, which was expected. According to Morka, that was to be expected. Nevertheless, the event went very well, and we are thankful to the presenters and attendees and board members who all volunteered their time. The board has received quite a bit of feedback from the event and welcome any and continuing feedback or suggestions that anyone may have. One request was to remove the 2 people with code offenses being granted clemency in over 30 years statistic from the Clemency Board's PowerPoint. While we can certainly remove this statistic from the PowerPoint, the reality is that the odds of receiving clemency is very likely going to come up either through a question from someone in the audience or a statement from someone who's already aware. We want to be careful not to appear as though we are hiding the ball going through presentations. As our staff director has said, it may be better, like bad facts in a trial, to find a way to rework the message in the presentations and get ahead of the questions we know will come. And if anybody has ideas on how to manage that issue, we would welcome them. Our staff director attempted to have the last event live streamed to those incarcerated in BOP and DOC facilities. However, the agencies maintained that they would not be able to accommodate the streaming, given the timing of the event in the late evenings on a weekday. Both agencies, however, do seem open to streaming generally, and our staff director has upcoming meetings in hopes to have it solidified for the third event, which is in September. So the next item, are there any questions on old business that any of the board members would like to raise? Comments or questions?
This is Emily. I have a question about the PowerPoint issue that you raised, Patrick. You know, as we, I think, discussed last time I did one of these presentations, I am afraid that I presented it a little bit of a too pessimistic view and did point out that statistic to folks. I really am of 2 minds about the best way to approach this. This is exciting that we have a clemency board and I want people to apply, but I also don't want to give people false hope and I don't want them to rely on this to the detriment of not applying for other things. And so to the extent that I'm going to continue to give these presentations, I'd be really interested in others' views. You know, I know other people stood up after me and I was really impressed by how much they were trying to give people hope and encourage people to apply for this. And when I heard that, I wished that I had been more of a cheerleader for the application process. But I just don't know the right way to approach this. And I'm very open to handling this however folks think it should be handled. And I'd be interested to hearing folks' views on sort of the right tone to take in that presentation.
I think it's a really, if I could speak on this, I think it's a really interesting question because this is a local DC board of clemency. And it is, but it's a local thing that asks the president to do something. And we have the local capability to have a direct file created, legislation that allows, like, for example, Second Look for All would allow individuals to file directly to local superior court judges where they could be guaranteed a hearing and have a time, there isn't a statutory timeline at this point, but to have some more direct avenue where they know that they could at least be heard and would know whether they're going to be granted relief or not. And as presidential administrations change and like priorities of the office of pardon attorney change, there is this tension between the decision not to create a local homegrown direct method to get the result versus the decision to create a avenue for asking the president for relief, and sort of supporting individuals who go to the president for relief. So I think that part of the distinction is for people to understand that while the district doesn't have autonomy over much of its criminal legal system, here's a piece of autonomy that the district could have if the district created, the council created, and the mayor signed legislation that would allow individuals a direct remedy. So I think people should still understand that despite the creation of a clemency board, there are really other ways to accomplish the very same result through a local process for which the district has control. So it's true that the mayor can't grant clemency, but the council and the mayor can create a process that does what commutation does, gets people out of prison for various reasons that they could put into the statute. The mayor and the council have the ability to do record sealing, which gets also at the impact of the pardon. So I think it's important for people to understand the distinction, and that there's a reason that what we have is only the power to write a recommendation to the president, who defers their authority to the pardon attorney at this point, and then the pardon attorney can put us through that process. So I think we should be clear about that.
Thank you for that. Are there other comments?
I'll say one more thing with the clemency process we already have currently. I think there is something to be said about, when explaining the clemency board and why the clemency board exists, to say something like, this is a statistic, like in the last 30 years, it's been 2 people. However, that's why the board's here. The board is here to essentially give that voice to those with DC code offenses through the recommendation letter, as to support their clemency applications. So to help with that. So maybe take the reality of it and sort of twist it and say, like, but apply so that we can sort of try to change this narrative.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and the way that I have approached this in the meetings, and again, I have a very thick skin, and I am happy to, if people think I've been approaching it the wrong way, I'm very happy to hear that and do it differently. The way I've been approaching this is to say basically that only 2 people have been granted this, that though the pardon attorney has told us that they will seriously consider a recommendation from the mayor, and that we are hopeful that if the clemency board makes recommendations for release and the mayor agrees with them and sends a letter of recommendation to the pardon attorney, that will have great weight in the pardon attorney's recommendation to the president.
I think that's the way to sort of spin the narrative. I think another thing we can do is think about the ordering of which we have our presenters, right? Because we have currently Norman, who gives this great story of hope. Then we go into the pardon attorney, who tells this process that seems daunting, candidly, right, to the person who's sitting there, like, okay, well, like, what, I have to do all these things. Okay, it's very technical, hard to sort of digest. Then we have ours that says, and only 2 people in 30 years have gotten it, right? That just sort of, that can sort of be the thing that sort of knocks hope out. So maybe figuring out a way to rework it, maybe putting Norman in between, maybe having more, which we'll hear later, I've been working on having more clemency recipients, maybe not just Norman, more stories of hope throughout the clemency board's event, so that it can continuously tell the narrative that, though it may seem so far away, just the way Norman talked about, like the spider web, seeming this sort of the spider web, I can't remember, but it just seems so like bleak. It happens, and it's happened in more than one person, right? So here are these recurring stories.
I just don't know why we would want to present a narrative versus tell people the truth about, like, exactly what this is, right? So we have 150 people who have come home more now under IRA. Because the DC Council and the mayor legislated something directly and gave people an avenue to have a hearing and a voice. And then we have 2 people who have gotten clemency over 30 years. So I don't know why there should be an investment in anything that gives people anything but the most accurate information. And DC residents who have federal convictions, it is super important for them to have this, right? So if the pardon attorney will truly listen to the mayor's recommendation, then this is incredible for all the district residents who have district court convictions that can only have an avenue for relief through Congress and the president. But we should be really clear with people also that the DC Council, the DC Council also passed compassionate release legislation following the First Step Act and then improved upon that. So we have local ways to provide relief for people, meaningful relief for people that are not just making recommendations to the president. I think we should be super clear with people that here's the law and here's the impact and here's the way that district residents have been able to be impacted.
And for those who,
I guess that there shouldn't be a mission of projecting hope. I think the mission is projecting truth. People are incarcerated and suffering and want avenues for relief, and there shouldn't be any sort of projection of anything other than truth and truth about what it is, where it is that the district can act and where it is that the district can't act. And so how the district can act directly to make avenues for relief and where those avenues of relief are limited by the federal actors in the system, and therefore there should be other avenues explored if that is a district priority. Because we're not hamstrung in this, right? I think part of the narrative of we're doing everything we can is a bit of a false narrative, because there is more that we can do. We are limited in the clemency space, in the pardon and clemency space, when we are asking the federal government and the president to act. But we are not limited in Superior Court, and we are not limited in DC Code, and we're not limited in that sense.
Yeah, I do appreciate that. And I'm also really grateful that PDS has participated in each of these community meetings, because I think in particular, PDS is the voice in the room talking about IRA and really being clear about what the remedies are that are available to people. Clemency being the newest one, and the one that is our particular focus. I don't think that information gets short shrift in these community meetings. I think your folks have done a very good job of making that case. I guess there's also a sense of wanting to really engage our federal partners and really want them to be at the table with us to the extent that we have authority to do it. In this particular situation, clemency is our mandate. So, affecting that as best we can is really the mission that I want us to accomplish. But I don't think there's no delusion that this is the only remedy or even necessarily the most direct remedy, but it is a new remedy. Okay, are there any other comments on this that you want to raise? Okay, so what I'm going to ask the staff director to do is to come back to us with sort of an agenda that reflects those stories of hope in a different way, but also that is really explicit and listing all of the remedies that are, explicitly listing those in the information that we provide to people. I believe that you do already, but I want you to at least to review that and make sure we're doing as specifically as we possibly can. Does that agree? Anybody disagree with that?
No, I have one question. Do folks know the two folks who were convicted of DC code offenses that got clemency? Do we know what they were convicted of? Because my one concern is that, Norman is really inspiring and I love hearing from him. But my understanding was that he was convicted of a nonviolent drug offense and it wasn't a DC code offense. And folks who are applying as DC code offenders who are still in custody are not similarly situated to Norman. They're in for violent offenses. And again, I want people to apply for this so that we can consider them and make recommendations. But this is what I'm struggling with a little bit. I don't want to mislead people about what they're up against and what the history of this is and what else they can be trying to do.
yes, we know that one was convicted of second-degree murder, and the other one, I believe, is unlawful distribution of drugs, but let me pull it up. And I will say that I think in the last meeting we spoke about the community meeting where myself, Lamont Carey from Morca, and Liz Oyer, the pardon attorney, attended with community members. And that was one of the actual issues that community members brought up. A lot of us are here with violent charges. What about us? And does that, we want to make sure that we are heard too. It's our understanding that there's been a history of people who are granted clemency who have non-violent offenses. That was brought up to her as well.
Interesting. Did you get any feedback? Because again, I'm really just trying to understand what would be helpful to the folks that we're trying to provide information to. And I'm happy to approach this however folks would find it to be helpful. And like I said, I felt after Lamont got up and was so inspiring, I had some regret about the way I had presented it. And so really have been trying to think through, am I approaching this wrong? And so in any event, I'd be curious to know if we know what the folks who were there thought, or, if folks have ideas about how to approach this going forward, or if folks want to write, I've now done 2 of these, and I'd love for other people to do them too.
I think we could continue the conversation. I spoke to Director Carey from Morca, and he said that he's very used to having to sort of come and sort of give the inspiring speech that is still possible, because a lot of the criminal legal system seems very daunting in a lot of ways. And when things seem, for those who are in DC, from what he says, there's a lot of freedom in DC, even for returning citizens. And so for the returning citizen population, it is often sometimes, they need, or he gives a push to still do more, just because you have a lot of freedoms here in DC. You can vote, it doesn't hinder you from jobs as much. Like you go next door to Maryland, you go next door to Virginia, you go try to travel to Australia, which was an actual story that he told me, and you get there and then you can't go. You're getting turned around because of your criminal conviction. It still matters. And so in a lot of ways, those who are in the community are out of custody, they're able to work, they're able to live, and oftentimes still need a push to do a little bit more because they're thinking sort of more in the now, what's happening now versus the longer term. But I'm happy to have him even come speak, because he's given me a lot of information about the community and a lot of feedback about the event. And he was there when this feedback was given and said the same thing.
Okay. Any other comments that folks want to make before we move on? No? Okay. Thank you for that. And we will, this will become an important issue, because under new business, our first item is that we're planning a community event in Southeast. That will be our 3rd one. We're partnering with Parks and Rec for the event, and it will be at Furby Hope Recreation Center. We're determining which Saturday, but it'll be a Saturday from 1 to 3 p.m. to help accommodate schedules of diverse community member population. It's also our hope that the day and time change will make the event accessible to those who are incarcerated in BOP facilities with district code offenses. Our partnership with both Morca and DC Parks will broaden the network of community members we can reach, increase promotion, and broaden our educational impact. Parish is also working to have more clemency recipients present, including the 2 recipients we know of with DC code offenses, to give their stories of hope as well. Any questions on that? I think we're in final negotiations about a few dates, and I'm pretty sure you'll inform us of what's possible in the next month or so.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Just another update on community engagement and outreach efforts. Last December, the Clemency Board participated in the BOP Community Resources Video Conference Day and shared information to persons with DC code offenses who are incarcerated in BOP facilities about the application process for the letter of recommendation. We are excited to participate in that event. Sorry. Excuse me. We are happy to participate in that event. Again, we did it again this year on June 27th, but the event was canceled. So Ms. Bryan, who leads the coordination of the event, maintained that she'll keep the board updated on the next one. So while we did it last year, this one was canceled. CSOSA is hosting their third expungement event in partnership with Representative Oye Christian Legal Aid on July 22nd. Our staff director has attended the previous two events on our behalf, informing returning citizens and loved ones of incarcerated persons about clemency, the board, and the board's application process, and our upcoming community event. It would be awesome to have a board member to get active in the community and attend this year's event on the board's behalf. If you are interested and able, it would be very great if you could potentially do that. It's again on July 22nd. You can just reach out to Barisha directly if you're willing. There's a new stakeholder in community connections. Shanae Bryant is new to the role in BOP, where she serves as liaison into the BOP facilities. This is very helpful to the board, and we've had many barriers when attempting to disseminate information to BOP, given the various institutions and their locations throughout the country. So we've been in contact with her, and we'll meet her virtually on July 20th. We're hoping she can assist us with our priority to get information about the board, the application process, and our events into BOP facilities housing persons with DC code violations. At this time, I'd like to make a motion to add a new item to the agenda. Can I get a second? Second, all those in favor?
Second.
Yeah, got it. We're all in favor. Thank you. So what I wanted to call attention to was the Clemency Board has an open seat for a member of the District of Columbia Bar in good standing with experience in criminal law. We've had some interest in the position, but it is currently still open. If you are interested, please reach out to our staff director and submit your application through the Mayor's Office of Talent and Appointments website. It's the moda.dc.gov. We would certainly appreciate anybody who meets the criteria and is interested in applying. Okay. Next part of our agenda is public comments. And I'd now open the floor to the public.
Yes, thank you. My name is Charles Hopkins. I'm employee at Voices for a Second Chance. We are really interested in the DC Clemency Board, specifically dealing with DC prisoners, men and women that are sentenced under DC Criminal Code, but when they go in the system, they give them their number is a 007, so they're called 007s. And so the 007s, to give you background, 007s, when you sentence as 007, you're not afforded the same opportunities in institution that prisoners are sentenced under federal code. So the reason why I'm raising this is because our concern and the concern that we have men and women coming to our office on a regular, and we tell them about this. We was at the Southwest thing, so we tell them about this process. We tell them that this information, that this exists, and that they could communicate this to men and women that's incarcerated, let them know that they have it's a probability they can get their sentence commuted. Their concern is how do they position themselves to get a commutation when they can't get access to program services or those things that will give them a leg up, where in the federal prisoners, ones that sentenced under federal code, have all those access. And I'm gonna close on this point, because once they closed in Lorton, they had a series of legislations that existed that allowed prisoners to have access to getting their sentence reduced. I think it was a Good Time Credit Act. Wilhelmina Roloff passed it, and it allowed for DC prisoners, men and women, if they did certain things, they would get their sentence reduced or good time credit towards reducing their sentence. So our concern is how do we communicate to them that they, regardless of what the circumstances is, the only thing you're doing is a sanitation job and not getting no shots, that's a ticket. How do they make a case for commutation or clemency? That's our concern.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hopkins. I appreciate Voices for a Second Chance being a participant actively with us. I was fortunate enough to go and visit with you last year, and I understand I have an invitation to come back, so I do plan to take advantage of that and come bend your ear about what the board has been doing. So very much appreciate you being here today. You know, in terms of our activity within BOP, I can let others who know more about that than I do talk directly on that issue. We are starting to make good contact with BOP, and we're hoping for even greater access as we go. But there are some specific things that you know, we are at least starting an initial dialogue with them on. On your particular matter, I'm not sure if there are others on the call who could, board members or our staff director, who could speak on, you know, how we address the issues you raised.
Well, I'll say that I personally didn't know what you were saying. You said that those with DC code offenses, once they enter the BOP system, do not have access to programming or any things inside of the system. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, because their sentence under, when they get in the system, they're called 007s. So when they closed Lawton, all the legislation initiatives that was specifically designed around giving them the benefits of programming and progressing didn't go with them. So now they're in a position where their 007 number make them a different set of prisoners, and they treat it differently. That's the facts.
Yeah. Well, that's the first thing. I think I appreciate that education and information. And I emailed you yesterday. I would love to talk to you offline and continue more of the conversation. I think for the Clemency Board and the letter of recommendation specifically, I would say that to DC code offenders to still tell their story, right? Tell that story as best as you can. Do the application, and you have the chance to tell that story more in a hearing. If that question's asked, if it's noticed that, you know, well, I see you didn't do any programming, or did you do any programming? The answer can be no, and say why, right? Say why. In the same way that someone who, I don't know, maybe deaf or hard of hearing could say, well, you know, in the BOP systems, I don't have access to a phone that, you know, with a system that I can communicate with my family members. So when you don't see any family member support, it's because I haven't talked to them in 20 years. You know, tell that story. That's the truth. I think the Clemency Board is aware of the truth of the system, aware of the BOP system, and all of the barriers and things that sort of blocks that happen that can be towards progress. And I would say just add that to your story.
Thank you
very much for that. Thank you. Are there other public comments that folks would like to make?
Yes. Hello, everyone. Olinda Moyd. Good to see everyone again. I apologize for missing the last community event. I had every intention of being there, but I heard that it went well despite my being absent and playing that very important role of being the timekeeper. Just wanted to share briefly that I had a conversation recently with Liz from the Office of Pardon Attorney. And I just wanted to emphasize a point that Emily made. I think, you know, a part of the message that should be shared in every setting is that we now have a person in that position who, at least according to my conversations with her, seems open to giving much weight to the recommendations that come from the Clemency Board. Of course, that's not a guarantee, but I think that the fact that she is in that position and seems open to recommendations that come from you all is something important to share with the community.
Thank you very much for that, Professor Moyd. Your timekeeping ability was missed, but we got out of there before midnight, so that was good. I think, you know, all of us recognize, number one, the pardon attorney shows up at community meetings in the District of Columbia, which I think is something that is new and novel and good. And she is hearing the same stories we are hearing in the public and the same frustrations. And I think that's also good. And her willingness to do that is certainly appreciated. It's a sad situation, though, and the statistics are the statistics. And I also don't want to necessarily shy away from them. Well, I say appears to be a new day, and that's what our job is to present to them letters of recommendation that are compelling, and so I want to focus on that. So, yeah, we'll continue to work with the pardon attorney, and I do appreciate her statements of varying degrees of strength over 2 different meetings of that the clemency board letter of recommendation will be an important consideration for them. I'm very grateful for that. So, yeah, thank you.
I
Are
think
there
there's
any other public comments?
public comment from Mr. Is it Wahid? Yeah.
Yes, please, Mr. Wahid, go ahead.
Yes, good morning. Can everyone hear me well?
Yes. Yeah.
Let me lower my hand. Hi, so my name is Saeed Abdul Wahid. I work with Voices for a Second Chance as well. And I kind of wanted to chime in to piggyback what Mr. Hopkins was saying. I believe that a big part of the issue with our citizens that are still incarcerated is that lack of bridge of communication and understanding as well. There are honestly a lot of individuals that are still incarcerated that would more than likely qualify under the criteria for the computation, but it is the biasness in regard to the Washingtonians or people from the DMV area um, with that approach, period. In various prisons, the caseworkers, even when they have the information, they're not conveying it. And unfortunately, there is no systematic protocol in prisons. You have the warden and you have the caseworkers. And if the warden doesn't have that professionalism to light fire under the caseworkers to make sure that they're notifying these individuals of these possible avenues of relief, they never find out. And the few that find out, they don't possess the capabilities as far as legalities to put together a pro se or a motion or anything of the sort. So I just want to reiterate again, I think that a big part of it is really the communication and biasness, and there has to be executable accountability in place as opposed to just presenting, what we think someone should do. I'm praying that we can find a way to establish a sense of accountability when someone's not doing what they're doing, because these individuals that are left behind in prison that are changing and are showing change, 24 hours to them is not the same 24 hours to us. Our 24 hours is their 48 hours. Our 1 week is 2 months to a person incarcerated. And PTSD is real, and when you feel left behind and you return to that society that you feel left you behind, it doesn't make it any easier for your acclimation or for your zeal or desire to give back and help heal the community. So I think there's a domino effect that's happening, honestly. And we gotta get to the root of it and just light fire under these tails and make sure that people are being held accountable, because we've been seeing through the statistics the deterioration of fairness for years, and we've been putting together strategic strategies and things of that nature. But there's no all-out execution that's bringing the results. We have to act. We have to act now, because it's not just the individuals that are incarcerated that are going through that system, that prison sentence. The people that love them are as well. So I mean, to heal our community, we have to just put that grunt on our shoulders and put people into positions of accountability. You can't just keep stealing money and doing the 85% of your job. We're talking about healing the community. Incarceration is not the end all for healing. Meeting people where they are and fixing what they need is that. So I just wanted to chime in with that. And my apologies for possible redundancy. Thank you for your time.
No apologies necessary. That was actually really, really poignant, and thank you very much for those comments. And you are talking to the crowd that is with you. This is a group that is with you.
Yes, thank you.
I would like to move the conversation on a little bit in terms of what are the things as a clemency board, as a board that has a very specific set of responsibilities and authorities, what is it that we could do to advance that conversation within BOP and start to have that conversation with you? I mentioned earlier that I think I have a standing invitation to come back, and maybe I'll bring some of our board with us and have a dialogue with you in a community setting of your choosing, where we could start to have that conversation. I'd very much appreciate that.
Hey, Chairman, Evan, I think that
Yes.
that right there, that would be the way to do this, and we on board, because we know that this is a good thing for men and women that's incarcerated. We know this, and we got one of our colleagues. I heard somebody mention somebody that got a pardon under Barack Obama. I seen the guy that they had the last time. One of our colleagues had also got a pardon from Barack Obama and is in a position to talk about some of the things, right? But I think what Sai was saying, communication, but for us, right, where we want to be at, we want to be in a position to get access and convey. So we're trying to get access to the BOP and convey to the men and women that this system exists. Like Ms. Moore said, we got a partner in justice that's going to be objective in looking at the information. And we got people here that's objective in terms of like processing information to get them to start putting together some kind of petition or information that we can get somebody to go in there and help them structure it so they can have a fighting chance on getting something done. So we're on board with you in that regard. But the communication, and we'll be real instrumental in from henceforth on with these community meetings. We'll be real instrumental in like going around making men and women that's out aware of it and making the men and women that's in their family members aware of it so they can come to the meetings and be educated on it and give their input. So thank you very much for that.
And thank you for that. We can use all the help we can get in getting the community and raising awareness about what our authority is and what we can actually do to help and to start to understand what are the issues out there and start to be a forum where those issues, like you're doing today in a public meeting, being able to start to put those issues in front of the public. So thank you very much for your comments. So with that, I'm going to ask for a motion to adjourn. But first I want to ask if board members are available for our next board meeting, which would be on September, I'm hoping for September 8th, Friday, September 8th. Are board members present here available for that meeting? It would be 10:30 a.m. I see 1, 2. Michael, I see no.
I'm out of office that day, but
Okay.
Can you give me 1 second?
Yes, please.
That's fine for me.
Okay.
It's also fine for me.
Okay. I'm going to say September 8th, Michael, right now. And if that changes because we cannot get the full quorum, I'll be in touch and we'll make some adjustment for that if that's okay with you. Okay, so we'll plan that our next public meeting is Friday, September 8th, 10:30 a.m. Okay, with that, is there a motion to adjourn? Somebody's got to say yes. Okay, so
Yes.
all right, all those in favor? Aye. Great. So we're adjourned. And now for board members, we'll be going into our closed portion of the meeting, which is not open to the public. So thank you all for coming today. Very much appreciated, especially the public comments. Fantastic. Thank you.
Appreciate your time. Continue to be amazing, you guys.
Mm-hmm.